So I don't believe in free speech. That is a statement that is going to get a lot of people angry, especially since I think definitely Americans, it means a lot to them. It means a lot. Their freedom and their free speech means a lot to them. Welcome to Tea with Lexi, and today's flavor is peppermint tea. You might be able to see it steaming, so I'm not going to take a sip just yet, but it's really good. But back into my main point. I don't believe in free speech. Now, you're probably wondering why I would make such a outrageous statement, and you're probably thinking, oh, Lexi, does that mean that you believe in censorship and you believe that everyone should have the same opinion and all of that stuff? The issue I have with this whole obsession with free speech and like, oh, we need to protect free speech and no moderation or anything is people act like speech exists in a vacuum, right? People act like if they go online and they give a certain opinion that, okay, that's just my opinion. It doesn't make any sort of impact. That's just me giving my opinion, whatever. But it doesn't. Words influence people. And ideologies, they spread and people learn certain beliefs. And the issue with this is if it's not a belief that has a lot of truth behind it, if it doesn't have a lot of, if it's very, I think, negative, if it's very like counterintuitive, that's where the issue comes in. Social media has made that influence more powerful than ever before, and millions of people can be reached instantly, right, with any sort of idea. So this is why this matters, right? Humans aren't perfectly rational, and most of them aren't very smart. We are very emotional. We're influenced by repetition. We're influenced by this group mentality of what other humans believe and what other humans that we idealize believe. We're influenced by the people around us, and that's just like psychology, right? If enough people repeat something and they start giving like inflated statistics, they start giving like justifications, because people could justify absolutely anything with like a good argument, even if it's like not true.
Women, W. What does women equal? Fellas, what does women equal? Time and money, right? Time times money, okay? But what is time also? Time is money. Time is money. So money times money. What's the name of saying money times money?
Money squared.
Money squared. Money squared. So guys, women equals money squared. But what's the root of all your problems? Money. Money's the root of all your problems. So money squared equals problems. But what does money squared also equal? Women. Women equals problem.
Then it can start feeling true to other people and to most people. The problem comes in with the algorithm, especially because the algorithm rewards engagement. It doesn't reward truth. It doesn't reward neutrality. It doesn't reward nuance. It rewards this like sense of tribalism that people tend to have, where it's sort of evolutionary within humans, because what gave us like the amount of intelligence and what gave us the amount of power we have over like what distinguishes us from other sort of animals and species is that we have this like herd collectivism mentality, right? But the issue comes in with this and with free speech, because if something keeps getting promoted to your face and there's tons of people in the comments agreeing and it's getting tons of engagement, people being like, oh my God, I was waiting for someone to figure this out, or even like arguing against it. And it can get so many people recruited into things that are just like terrible. Now, this is probably one of the greatest examples in modern times of this. Black pill content. I'm sure you've all seen like BP edits.
It's not true that everyone's beautiful in their own way. Maybe on the inside, but on the outside, that's just not true. You could have plastic surgery, but this is me after plastic surgery. My eyes will just never look normal, and my face will always be too wide, and my nose.
Listen, I'm not here to sit here and blame like lonely teenage boys that are feeling very insecure and that are getting basically used by this ideology to make people money, right? I'm blaming the people profiting from their insecurity. Black pill basically is incel rhetoric and tells people if you're ugly, your life is over, like it's so over for you. Women don't respect you, women don't want you, your genetics determine everything. And I'm sure you've seen this all before because it's not like a new statement. It is not necessarily untrue. And that's the thing that I think definitely gets people, is that if they say something that has like half truths, it's so easy to get people, because it's true that if you're attractive, your life is going to be like significantly more easy, and that people are going to treat you a lot better. Dating's going to be easier. We all know about pretty privilege, but the idea that black pill creates is that that's the only thing that matters, especially when it comes to like dating, getting people to like you, whatever. So it really capitalizes off these very lonely people, especially men, but I've seen femcel ones too. Like I've seen women get into this. The algorithm just like gets so much engagement off of this. And that's the worst part because it's so profitable. So you've seen like these black pill influencers like Clavicular, Syrian Psycho, like
Nobody wants to say it, but heighdism might actually be worse than racism.
these people that are just like, they're adults or young men that capitalize on other young men being insecure. They run courses and they make money off of showing them how to ascend, and that makes them profit. Inspiration for this video came off of, I was on TikTok today and I saw this man in making a TikTok video about how he's not attractive, he's quite short, he has a little weight on him, but he's never found like finding women and finding girlfriends hard because he just has a good personality, has a good, like he's independent, he has good humor, you know. That's the way he has charisma and he actually has something to give in relationships other than just the way he looks, right? Or money. And I saw a lot of men reacting to this in like young boys in the replies of this comment section, basically saying stuff like, oh, you're just trying to feed engagement from women. Oh, like this is not true. It's not true. Even though they're seeing literal evidence in front of their eyes and other men agreeing in the comments that are not conventionally attractive, literally posting pictures of themselves and being like, okay, I don't have a hard time finding women because, you know, I worked on myself, right? It's not all about looks. And women agreeing in the comments. There are still like young boys with these accounts that are all about looks maxing and like how to look, how to ascend, how to look hotter, how to be Chad, right? Replying to these and being like, this isn't true. The women aren't good. You're not going to get women from saying this, like all that stuff. And even to the women agreeing, basically cussing them out and being like, this is not true. You're lying. You're just trying to make yourself seem like a better person. So where did they get all of this from? They got all of this from the fact that people are just allowed to hop online and say whatever they want and perpetuate these ideas, maybe from their own insecurities or the fact that they know that it's going to make them money. People can be so easily influenced from it. Like, for example, I could go online and I could say, oh, I got stung by a bee. Bees are complete evil, and then name every sort of like bad thing about bees. People could like react to that content maybe because they got stung by a bee before, maybe because they're scared of bees, and they could start agreeing on my campaign to completely extinguish bees and make sure that like they go extinct. Like, isn't that insane? The fact that me, just a regular person, could go online and say that and get like some sort of following. If I explain it well enough and I capitalize on people's emotions and their insecurities enough, I could get them to want to make bees extinct, even though they do so many good things for the environment. It's the same thing with this whole black pill nonsense, because there's so many men out there who, just because maybe they don't think they're as conventionally attractive, instead of just being like, okay, I'm gonna work on myself, maybe I'll go to the gym and like look better. It's not even just about looking better, but maybe they'll say like, okay, I'll work on my personality. I'll work on the fact that maybe I'm easily angered or I'm insecure or I don't have much confidence or charisma. No, instead of saying that, they are pushed the message that's more harmful, which is basically, it's all about your looks, it's all about your money, and you're never gonna find a girl and blah, 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 blah. And you're telling me that people should just be allowed to do that and that that's not harmful to our society at all? That's why I'm against the idea of free speech, because speech is never free, right? You don't just go online and then just be like, oh, I have this opinion, and that everyone's just gonna be like, okay, that's your opinion, this is my opinion, that's fine. Your choices never exist in a vacuum, and I think people really don't understand this, especially when it comes to the internet. And I think it's because humans really view themselves as so little and have such little importance that most people feel like they're just following a crowd, right? Because we're all pushed by ego. This is why I don't believe in free speech, because we should have more moderation, especially on the internet, because it has so many very young people on there and very insecure people on there. Because where do you think people who are like introverted, awkward, don't have many friends go? They go to the internet because that's where they survive socially. And social media platforms are just allowing these messages like Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube, like look at me right now, just spreading my opinion. You see the same thing with extremist political content, especially I think on Instagram Reels. If you were on Instagram Reels in 2024, you saw after Mark Zuckerberg changed some of the content and moderation when it came to Instagram, Facebook, etc., and how everything suddenly became extremely reactionary, extremely like engagement bait, and extremely hateful. And the amount of times I saw the N-word on there, it was literally in every single comment section.
Can a robot write a symphony? Can a robot turn a canvas into a beautiful masterpiece?
But the issue is also with its now extreme right-wing anti-immigration pipelines, because it's so easy to tell people certain statistics, right? To show somebody, a brown person, committing a crime and just be like, okay, these statistics show that brown or black people commit this many crimes and do this and completely ignore any sort of nuance in the conversation and just be like, we have to get them all out because they're ruining our country. Does that not seem insane to you that your average person can go online and post that and just it'd be completely okay, face no repercussions whatsoever for the fact that they've created and helped a whole pipeline that could lead to the actual deaths of people in real life? And also lead to the actual laws being made, people voting in certain ways. That's what free speech leads to. There's certain things that you shouldn't be able to say and that social media platforms really crack down on that people don't address because they have this whole idea of we should be able to say whatever you want. No, you shouldn't. Most people don't have critical thinking skills when it comes to the things that they consume. They consume things and then they go, oh, okay, that must be truth. They don't do any checking. They don't do any critical thinking. They don't go, okay, well, which part of that is just like an ideology? Which part of that is actually based in truth? Which part of these statistics are inflated? How did they do this research? People don't ask those questions anymore. And I don't really think they ever did, but it's a lot worse now. There's been studies on this where researchers create TikTok accounts or Instagram accounts and they go online and they're like, okay, I put my gender as male or I put my gender as female. And the content they're shown without putting any sort of interest in, without searching anything, is completely different, like completely different. And even the comment sections are completely different. Like I've been on other people's devices on a video that I saw that I thought was controversial or that is controversial and I got a lot of reaction. And maybe on my device, it would be like on my account, it would say things like, oh, wow, this is like, how can you guys be canceling this person for this? Or, oh, this is so disgusting. Like, how could they possibly do this? And then you go on somebody else's device and the opinions of the comments section are completely different because people saying different things are shown to people saying things that agree with the person's algorithm and the person's opinions are going to be shown to them over and over again. And I think this is really obvious with the anti-immigration, the black pill stuff, and so many other like extremely opinionated communities and people that don't understand any sort of nuance whatsoever about gender, race, etc., that they'll see something that is like hard facts or completely against what their personal beliefs, but it's like a real life scenario, something that actually happened. And they'll tell you to your face that that's not true. Same thing happened with the black pill. They saw this guy who's not attractive, who's maybe a little overweight, who's short, and he has no problem getting women because he works on his personality and works on his charisma. And they'll tell him straight to his face that that's not true. This never happened. Or that you're doing this to appeal to women. That is insane to me, that you could see something so obviously factual in front of your eyes, but because you've been shown all this propaganda over and over and over again, that you'll really like believe it and fight evidence right in front of your face. That's why free speech shouldn't be allowed, because most people do not have the critical thinking skills. They don't have the discernment to be able to understand why they think certain things or why they fight against people who believe other things. I was speaking to this guy one time in school, right? And he is very, very right-wing, very anti-immigration, and very anti-people of color in general. And I asked him, I was like, well, why do you believe this? I don't think he's ever been asked that in his entire life, right? I asked him, like, not like getting angry. I didn't go like, oh, I hate you. How dare you say this? Blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of people were. And I think that's why he was kind of smiling. He just felt like, oh, I'm just getting a reaction out of it or whatever. I asked him to his face and I said, well, why do you believe this? Because you're friends with, you live in a very diverse country. You go to a very diverse school. You don't live in the UK. He was a very like reform, restore UK guy, right? You don't live in the UK despite being anti-immigration. So you immigrated to a different country. You're friends with a lot of black and brown people who aren't white, right? People who aren't from Europe, people aren't from the UK. And you still sit here and say, I don't like people who are of different races, different nationalities, different ethnicities to me. How does that make any sense? Because you believe that people of color are bad, that they are committing crimes and that they're all criminals and that they have like culture that is just so harmful and so terrible to all the like white people in the UK. You believe that, yet you have evidence right in front of you of the people that are all around you that is not true, that there isn't like an inherent thing inside of a person of color's body. There's not something inside of me that's saying like, oh, I want to hurt people, I want to do this, I want to bring my culture to the UK and I want to destroy everything. Nothing about the evidence around you shows that, and yet you still believe it. And you still continue to be friends with these people and think that they're good people and say that you like them. How does that make any sense? And that's why we shouldn't allow free speech, because the ability, especially on the internet, to question somebody and be like, well, why do you think that? That doesn't make any sense, whatever. Because when I asked this guy why he thought of all of that when he was like friends with people of color, he couldn't answer. He literally was like, well, like they're different. They're one of the good ones. They're this, they're that. He was like stuttering and he kind of like wanted to get out of the conversation. And it's like, well, that's what happens when people contradict your views, right? So how do you decide what's harmful? Because the issue with being anti-free speech is that people can hear that and they can think, okay, so we're going to get the government to put people in jail for having certain opinions, or we're going to have people deleted for having this certain political opinion or this certain political opinion. And that obviously is not a good thing, because we need difference of opinion, we need conversation, we need dialogue. I'm saying that platforms online should have moderation decisions every day, considering most people are heavily influenced by social media. I'm not saying that people, if they have a conversation in their house or that they put some controversial tweet on Twitter, that they should be arrested. No. I'm saying if you say something is misinformation, that's statistically wrong, right? Targets a certain group with like no real justification. Like, you're not just saying like, oh, I don't like when XYZ culture does this. No, you're not saying that. You're saying Black people always do XYZ. That should be labeled as misinformation or be taken down. Or at least these kind of things should not be pushed to the algorithm and not be rewarded by like monetarily and also with like attention, right? My personal opinion is that it's definitely going to be something very hard to navigate, and my solution is that yes, we should have more moderation, and yes, we should have like TikTok and Instagram employees like looking at who's saying what, looking deeper into that they're posting and if it's true or not. But we need to make sure that as the public, we also still have control over what these messages are, and that we know what they're moderating and why, and they put that in strict guidelines on their platform, so you understand what's being censored and what you're not being shown. The point is, nobody should be able to control the overall beliefs of people in society and what people are allowed to believe. Like, you shouldn't be punished for what you believe. Certain messages definitely should be moderated or censored if they're extreme, which I don't think is that crazy of a take. Because if you look at societies like China, no, it's kind of a bad example, but it's an example nonetheless. It's an extremely collectivist and powerful society. It got a lot done that places like the US and other Western cultures have not gotten done. Like, if you just look at their cities, if you look at their streets, if you just look at the way they operate in general, it's extremely advanced over other places, but they don't have full free speech over what they're allowed to say. Because while in America, people are debating whether people should like be able to get abortions, whether they should be able to go by certain pronouns or whatever, people in China are actually making decisions, actually prioritizing their people, and actually building. They're not just creating stupid discourse. They're not all hating on each other based on certain groups, right? They have none of that. Same thing with Dubai. Kind of a bad example. Say much on that. Again, the city has built extremely quickly because there aren't people who are allowed to just hop online and be like trashing certain institutions or other people, right? They're not allowed to do that. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Because look at the crime rates. Look at the crime rates in China. Look at the crime rates in Dubai. No country is perfect. And I think it's a good thing that we have such a disparity in the types of systems that we have. For example, the US being extremely individualistic and having like, oh, we can have like free speech or whatever. Or China having less free speech, but also being like extremely collectivist and like built. There's downsides to every single situation, but I think I would be more in favor of the situation in which everybody is kept safe, people aren't being targeted for things they can't control, like their skin color, sexuality, etc. I think I'd be more in favor of that system. But what do you guys think? Do you think platforms should be more moderated? Or do you think that we should be able to just say whatever we want? Let me know in the comment section. And thank you for watching Tea with Lexi. I don't know what flavor I should do in the next video, because the only other one I have right now is vanilla and horrible. So you guys are not going to get me drinking BS. Okay, bye.